Hi students, I wanted to introduce you to the process of creating either a drawing or a design that will ultimately go on your 15 by 20 surface or on half of that. At the beginning of the course, we will be dealing with half of that surface. So if your supplies haven't arrived yet, you can do all of your work on the sketch paper you have or on Xerox paper taped together. If you do have your materials, I want to go over what they're for and how to use them. Let's see here. So this would be your 15 by 20. That's about the size of your surface. At the beginning, we're going to be doing the color wheel on one side and either scales or designs on the other. In watercolor, we're doing scales. In color theory, we're doing designs. Regardless of what we're doing throughout the semester in both classes, in all classes, we always want to do thumbnails, which are studies, smaller studies, in anticipation of a larger completed project. The problem is people don't usually make them to scale. To scale simply means that whatever size the rectangle is that you're working on, when you go to start your introductory process, it has to be to scale to that paper. So the easiest way is divide it by 2, divide it by 4. Then you can create your area using your T-square or your yardstick. For example, if you're doing a surface that is 20 by 30, you could start with a 10 by 15 area. If you're doing an area that's 10 by 15, you can start by 5 and 7.5. It can be vertical or horizontal, but it's anticipating the scale. During the semester, we do a 3-step process, and that is to make sure that we still have the original drawing and we still have the original tracing so that we can transfer a design or a drawing multiple times. This allows you to redo something that didn't work out, that needs to be repainted, especially in watercolor, because if you mess up on watercolor, you have to throw out the paper and start again. Whereas with painting in color, you can kind of sometimes paint white over it, let it dry, and then keep building paint. Regardless, we will always want to have the version that we created. I'm not going to do the whole wheel measurement thing here. I have that in the other tutorial, but I wanted to show you what it would be to transfer a design onto a surface like this and what you would have to do. So for 15 by 20, half of it is 7.5, and by using 10, half of it is 5. So in this area, for example, you could create 4 different designs, all on different smaller papers, and then transfer it onto here. But I want to show you what it would be if you were to create a design, one big one, on this size, just so you can see what it is. Let's say you're working on several of these ideas, and you come up with one that you really like. Let me just start ahead with a design, keeping in mind the principles of design, which is off the edges, repetition, unity, variety, all of those things that we're going to talk about, not anything in the middle, variety of size, shape, value, later color. So let's just say this is the messy part. You want to have a paper that you can really, really sketch and play with and decide as you go how you want it to be. So let's see here, I want variety, I want overlap, I want variety in size, I might want depth, change directions, you can use colored pencil, but all that stuff we're going to go over. Right now I just want to show you the process of transferring a design. So the first step is messy design ideas. You can even fill negative space or do whatever you want on here. Decide if you want it to be vertical or horizontal. Let's see what I want to do here. I've been drawing through here. I'm deciding what I want in front, what I want in the back. Great thing about drawing through is you can decide later what you want to be in front or behind. And I may or may not keep it. For example, I could do this like on 5 different 5 by 7.5 areas. I'm feeling like it's a little bit busy. I'm going to make sure my focal point's not right in the middle. So just kind of that whole dialogue with yourself, shifting things around. So I'm not committing yet. I'm just doodling, I guess you could say. And remember, what it is irrelevant. It's all about the success of the composition, the way it moves. Not like in this shape. So this first step is really to just keep drawing, redrawing, drawing, redrawing, make it really loose and messy. It's especially important if you're doing a drawing. So if you're drawing, you have to be working from direct observation, and so you're going to do a lot of changing and mixing. And it may look like something or it may not, it doesn't matter. I'm really doing this just to show you the process. I could keep going on and just kind of, I don't like it, but I don't want to get too caught up and forget about showing you this technique. I don't want to cut this corner off evenly. Move this. So it's like you can make these adjustments based on what you learn about design. You never want to chop a corner symmetrically. That's why I elongated that. And you always do want to have a large anchor grounding everything. Still don't like that. So I'm gonna move that. So I just want to show you how messy you can be. Messy's good. The good thing here is I ended up leaning towards organic shapes, and it's very difficult to integrate organic and geometric. It's possible, but it's particularly challenging, similar to letting warm hues come back and blue forward. It's like the reverse of what you would think. The same thing with this. If you try to integrate geometric and organic, it's quite challenging. So this could be one of many that I come up with. I'm just not feeling this at all right now. But I want to kind of keep going. And just get it to at least how I want it. I think this is an issue of removing something altogether. Alright, that's better. It's always helpful in a design to fill the negative space. And I think if I put this in front, I'll create a little bit of depth, which might be interesting. I'm going to put this behind here. The definition of design is trial and error. Purposeful trial and error. So it's a back and forth and a back and forth, and it has formal principles throughout history, such as unity and variety, repetition, overlap, using the elements effectively in a composition. But the main thing to know is it always involves trial and error and is always purposeful. The process itself is very purposeful. You don't always need to have a focal point, but it's an option. There are many different kinds of balance systems. The most intuitive one is asymmetry, where there's no particular type of system. I might put something here. But really take your time, because this part here, this is where you really have to work it out before you do the next stages. I don't like that. Anyway, okay, let's move on. So let's say this is your design and you need to transfer it to this surface. Now you have a thumbnail and you have a sense of scale. When you transfer this, you're now more familiar with the design you just invented, so it will flow better. And because it's close in scale, well, it's exactly in scale as the picture, you're going to get a better effect. And now I'm realizing that what I've invented is an anchor circle that hits around here, and now I'm going to do more of a gesture study. And I can make some mild changes if I need to, based on what was working and what wasn't working. And usually when you transfer to the larger scale, that's going to actually be the scale, it ends up to be better. It's just kind of a weird thing that always seems to happen, is when you transfer it, it seems to improve. I already like it better, but I'm still going on my thumbnail. And a lot of times you'll be posting your thumbnails for feedback. Now when you're doing a drawing and you're studying something and you go to transfer it, you want to be sure that it's to scale. So when you go to draw again, it's going to be closer to the accuracy that you got on the first one. Still messy, still loose, but now I'm getting closer to the size, the actual size that's going to be the design. And here, I'm going to tweak it a little right there, get it in front. Can catch some last minute errors if you're doing a drawing. Or if you're on a design, you can tweak things ever so slightly, but you have your general plan here. So this is the process of transferring something from one size to another as long as it's to scale. And the same thing with that. You can have several of these until you get it the way that you want it. This is great practice too with drawing, because you can kind of see how accurate you can get, or as close as possible to that. So if you ever want to, you can split it down the middle here and split it down the middle, and then you have a better sense of where things are. But it's way more important in drawing than it is in design, because design can work if you shift it a little and you don't have a source. But with drawing, you have to be really disciplined about the material you're working from. So I'm slowly getting a sense of how this is going to work larger. There may be something I want to do because it's larger for effect, or examine a possibility of something here. Maybe flip that the other way. But this is what I wanted to show you in terms of why you have the sketch paper. And then I want to show you why you have the tracing paper, why we want that extra step before we get to the carbon paper. And I'm getting a little bit roundabout in my description, so I'm going to go ahead and Okay, so at this point, I'm rushing it, but of course you'd spend hours. I'm just doing a quick demo. Let's say you're done and now you're going to commit to the lines that you know you want to use. You can leave the old ones there. That's the beauty of this. This is just another scratch paper. You have this scratch paper, now you have this scratch paper. Difference is this one's the actual size of the project, and this one, you've made your final adjustments, changes, commitments, and now I'm committing to a particular line within the gesture. Gesture's the most important line in art because it's an estimation and it gets you closer to accuracy. If you start with a hard line, you're missing the boat. Even if you're drawing a cartoon, you're missing the boat. You gotta start with gesture. The next most powerful line in art is a lost and found line. Disappears, comes back, disappears, comes back. Not to mention cross contour, but those are more drawing type lines. But whether it's design or drawing, you gotta do a lot of loose gesture before you commit. Now I'm committing. I can commit because I did all that. And you can make it even cleaner. You can use a colored pencil as long as you know which lines you're doing. You can keep slowly cleaning this up so that we can get to the next step. Always draw through so you don't get a weird circle if you're doing a circle. A little big, but actually I like it. Yeah, I'm getting more comfortable now with this design. I didn't like it at all before, and now I'm kind of digging it a little. I could do several versions, and you will be, because you need to post every week several ideas, and then we'll all be giving feedback about which one is working the best. I'm just making this really dark so you can see the process. Okay. I think I'm going to go this way instead over here. I like that better. Opens it up. And then I have some negative space here. This tucks behind and maybe even to there. Get a little depth. It's always good to indicate where your negative space is. So you can post really messy stuff. But once you get to a place where I do like a little circle right there. Or maybe here. That's better. Overlap it, you can't go wrong. Overlap and repetition. Okay, so let's say you're at a place now. Now we're going to go to step 2. Let's say you have all your sketch paper. Sketch paper comes with a kit. It's just a few sheets. If you can always use Xerox tape together. And when you have the sketch paper, you can draw the whole size first, the 15 by 20. But in this case, we're going to pretend that I'm now transferring to the same scale, same size exactly. So just pretend this is either a board or a nice watercolor paper, any surface where you're transferring to something good. You want to do all this out of the way first. Okay, so the next stage is the tracing paper. You think you could just slide this under and do it like that, but we want to take this extra step so that we have a record of the design. And you're going to be taking sketch paper, and then on top of it, tracing paper. And because, just for economy's sake, I've got the small, you might be lucky and have some tracing paper at home. But without, just go like this. And we want to tape this pretty securely because we're going to use it again. You're going to use the same design more than once. Sometimes not, but a lot of the times you'll want a documentation of this thing. So you're going to always keep this part set aside somewhere so that you can pull it back in and retransfer it. You could retransfer something 5 times as long as you've done the work. great thing is the work is done. Now you're going to have a template. It's a good idea to always trace the border with a ruler, especially because you're going to be transferring it to something that has a right angle. When you do this, take a piece of tape. That's a mistake people make. Ideally, you'd be on a regular table, not a round one like this, and you would tape it exactly to the ridge of the edge of the paper. But you want to make sure this is secure so it doesn't move. And we're going to end up doing something else with the tape too. Any tape works, but it just can't move. When you go to trace it, it's best to use a pen. Well, actually, if you have two different color pens, you can use a pen here and then a different color pen here. I only have a pen, so I am going to use a pencil. I just prefer a cleaner line at this point, but I'll just sharpen it. So at this point, you're absolutely into mechanical line. And you've done the border. I'm not going to do this whole thing. I feel like I'm rambling. But you want to really carefully trace. It's harder to see where it overlaps, but you can do it. Especially if you go outside. Natural light is the best. Real clean. I'm doing it really fast, but you can do it really, really slow, especially if it's a very, very elaborate design. This is a very simple design, so I don't need to spend as much time. I'm really rushing here. I want to really go slow. Just want you to see. These are the stacks of stuff you want to keep all semester. Sometimes students will revisit a project and reinterpret it later. So if you have this, that's another great opportunity to use this. And you can still start over. I mean, this is just once we give each other some feedback and support, you may feel pretty confident, ready to go. If you have geometric shapes, you can use a ruler at this point. Rulers have their limits, but if you've got some clean edges like this, it can be helpful to get clean, even though this is still pretty organic. Sorry to take so long, but I wanted to really show you the whole deal, because once you see it, you're going to use it the whole semester. Okay, this is the part where now we have a template. Especially key in a drawing, because if you work so hard on a drawing, or a design really, but a drawing, and then you don't have this, you can't redo it. That's particularly important in watercolor. But also, let's say you do a drawing in a color theory project, and then you change your mind and you want to paint the background and then put this back on top with the yellow carbon to show up, then you have this. This is great. This I can throw out. This is going to be the board that I transfer it to. But I have now, which is really great, and I can post this as part of my weekly posted grade. I can say, okay, here was my 5 by 7.5. Here's my 10 by 15. Here's the gesture marks. Here's the messy part I did. And then I tape my tracing together and end up with this design. Now, this is where the tape is really key. This is your yellow carbon. This is the good stuff. We use it because it's light enough to paint over, and it doesn't show your fingerprints as much, and it's easier to save your work because you can keep transferring. This will last you years. Unfortunately, they don't sell it in sheets, so I had to get a roll. And it's only 12 inches, so the same thing. You'll have to move it around or tape it. The yellower side goes down. Put your finger there to see the chalkiness. You know that that goes down on top of the good paper. Pretend this is your good paper, and you're doing half of the board or half of the watercolor like we're doing the first project, and you want to roll this out, darker side down. You don't need to cut it. You can, but you don't need to. If it's in the way, you can. This is the key right here, is show the edge. If you don't show the edge, you can get lost really easily. You can use this same area, probably or more of the semester. Carbon paper can be used hundreds of times until you can barely, it falls apart. But you don't need to keep using your roll. Save your roll, and when we get back to class, you can donate it to the carbon paper drawer or use it for other projects. But it lasts forever. It's really good stuff. Okay, so you want to tape it all down like this, but this is the key right here. If your border is, I might have to tear this off. I didn't want to, but maybe I'll just put something heavy on it. Let's say your border is, I'm not going to draw the whole thing, but let's say you have the board and this is the edge of it right here. Hope you can see that. Like this, let's say this is where you want your design to end. Let's say right here. Let's say you want to end your design right here, because I know you can see that from here. When you put your tracing paper down, you tear a corner where the border is, or the edge of the board, because then you can see the corner. And then you tear a corner at the other side so that you can see where this border ends and it's lined up. I am going to tear it off. Scissor would be prettier, but so for example, if I'm transferring this to here, if I don't line it up, and this is essential for the second project in color theory because it's an identical symmetry thing, you have to take your border here and line it up with that torn off corner so that you know where it ends. And then let's say your other corner is here, you tear it off here so that you can see where that is. So at least two corners. That way when you tape it down, you know you taped it in the right place instead of crooked. Crooked isn't going to work. Crooked means you have to start all over and it's a big pain. So tear one corner, dark side down. This is where you switch to a pen or a different color pen. If you need to redo the border, do the border. If it happens to go right to the edge of the design, that's fine. If not, you make the border. But the corner tear is really important, really important. Normally with carbon paper you can't press very hard because it makes a horrible dark line. With yellow it's not as creepy, but you can still check. You don't want to press so hard that you're just making a huge dent into your surface, but you want to press enough so that it goes through. Just going to do this corner and go really slow. I messed up there, so I did this one. And the beauty of the pen on top of the pencil or a different color is then you know where you've went. If you lift it too soon and you missed a part, it's really hard to line it up again, although the corners help because you've got the torn corners. And the key is tape it all down. Tape down your surface, tape down this, tape down all together, because you don't want it to move when you're doing this. If you get it off, it just looks terrible. So, alright, I'm gonna, hopefully you can see this, and then I'll be done. Okay, now when you're done is the reveal. And you can see how this transferred. It's light enough that you aren't going to be held to it if you have to paint over it, but it's dark enough that you can see it. And it's a little smeary, but not too bad. And that's it. Sorry that took so long, but just be sure you always do each of those steps.